Before launching into the selected Sikha for Parshat Va'etchanan, it might be useful to map out the points made in this Sikha, which could also be used at the completion of the 8 panels as a review. We will begin with a broad outline to Devarim Perek 6, which will provide a context for the focus of the Sikha, Devarim 6-7, the 4th pasuk of the Shema Yisrael, a pasuk that contains 2 mitzvot. One, the mitzvah of Limud Torah, V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam. A second is the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, v'dibarta bam, v'shachbacha u'v'kumecha. We will then tease out the first of the 2 mitzvot, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The quantification of this mitzvah is based upon a statement that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes to Yehoshua, V'higita bo yom v'layla. One should be involved with the study of Torah by day and by night. The Shulchan Aruch Harav points out that this goal can be achieved by a select few. For majority of the population, we have Perek Echad Shacharit or Perek Echad Arvit to allocate time for the study of Torah during the daylight hours and also during the nighttime hours. And for some, even this is an impossibility, and hence there is a third option that one could fulfill the V'higita bo Yom V'layla requirement for Torah study with the recitation of the Shema in the morning and in the evening. This is based upon the linking of these 2 mitzvot in Dvarim 6-7. We will look at footnote number 6 on this topic, in which the Shulchan Aruch Harav notes that while there are 3 options, the Torato, Umnato, a total devotion to Torah study, is the Lechatchila option. The other 2, Perek Echad Shachrit or Perek Echad Arvit, and the minimalist option of the recitation of Kriyat Shema as a fulfillment of Mitzvat Talmud Torah, are both B'di'evet options. Having noted a connection between the mitzvah of Talmud Torah to that of Kriyat Shema, the Rebbe will also note a difference, a distinction between these 2 mitzvot, in that the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema is treated as 2 independent mitzvot, a daytime obligation based upon the words Uvukumecha, a nighttime obligation based upon the word B'shachbacha. In contrast, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is a single mitzvah extending throughout the 24-hour period of a day, a position that will be reflected in the world of halacha. We will digress a number of times and look at the observations made in the footnotes. One of those digressions relates to the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema that identifies the textual source for the assertion that mitzvah Kriyat Shema is treated as 2 independent mitzvot. That source is recorded by Rabbi Sadiad Gaon and then again by the Ramban, where he challenges the position of the Rambam, who at first glance appears to subscribe to the position that the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema is a single mitzvah. The footnote goes on to note, however, that even according to the Rambam, mitzvah Kriyat Shema is deemed to be 2 separate mitzvot, evidenced by the fact that, from the standpoint of halacha, women are not obligated in mitzvah Kriyat Shema on the basis that it is a mitzvah aseh shehazman grama. We will also look at footnote number 5 that raises the issue regarding the brachot associated with the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, whereby a close reading of these brachot indicates that none of the brachot of either set of Kriyat Shema relate to the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. As a general rule, brachot that are recited over a mitzvah should relate to the theme of that mitzvah. We will then move back into the Sikha proper as a lead up to the core question. We will first identify 2 options with respect to Birchat HaTorah that is said as part of Birchat HaShachar, and identify 2 lines of thought. One position, offered by the Tosfot and the Mordechai, the Rosh and the Tur, maintains that the Birchat HaTorah is the bracha that is recited prior to the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Limud Torah. Mitzvot in general must be preceded with a bracha. This is especially so for mitzvot Limud Torah. The role of the bracha is to link the act, the mitzvah of learning, with HaKadosh Baruch, as opposed to the study of Torah merely for the purpose of gaining knowledge. We will also identify a further stratification for option 1, regarding the inclusion of 2 paragraphs, one drawn from the Torah Shebiktav, the other from the Torah Shebal Peh, immediately following Birchat HaTorah. The Tosfot of the Mordechai maintain that technically the inclusion of these 2 Torah texts is unnecessary on account of the fact that Mitzvat Limud Torah is a 24-hour mitzvah, so that at any time one picks up a sefer, in actuality it is a continuation of the mitzvah that had begun earlier in the day. The Rosh and the Tur disagree. They maintain that if Birkat HaTorah is for the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah, the fulfillment of that mitzvah must follow immediately after the recitation of the bracha, and therefore Minhag Yisrael is to insert the Birkat Kohanim following Birkat HaTorah. An opposing view is that of the Agur, who maintains that Birkat HaTorah is part of Birkat HaShachar, and as such, it comes not as a bracha for a particular mitzvah, and hence, in theory at least, there is no need to recite Torah passages following the Birkat HaTorah. All of the above will provide a context for the core difficulty raised by the Rebbe regarding the two mitzvot under discussion, the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema and the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah, and the anomalies associated with each, namely, that mitzvah Kriyat Shema is an expression of a core belief in Judaism. Shema is an affirmation of one's Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim. It applies both in and out of Eretz Yisrael. It applies both during and following the Churban. It applies equally to male and female. The recitation not, but the belief that underpins that recitation applies equally. It is a mitzvah, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, that is constant, unchanging, and yet mitzvah Kriyat Shema is divided into two independent mitzvot. In contrast, mitzvah Talmud Torah is a variable mitzvah, one that points to change, one that points to differences amongst people in its fulfillment. Yet, as we have established, mitzvah Talmud Torah is a single mitzvah incorporating all this difference and change. And in the final panel, we will have textual references to the variable component of mitzvah Talmud Torah. One, the most obvious, is that technically mitzvah Limud Torah requires comprehension and understanding. And while the mere recitation of Chumash text counts as a mitzvah, this is not the case with Torah Sheba'al Peh. You cannot merely recite Torah Sheba'al Peh text and consider it to be the fulfillment of mitzvah Talmud Torah. And secondly, we will look at two textual references in which distinctions are made between Limud Torah by day and Limud Torah by night, one from Masechet Eruvin, the other a Midrash Agada recorded in the Yalkut Shimoni. From here we will move into the actual Sikha for Parshat Va'etchanan.